The Altean venture, Atlantis. Many of our ideas about Atlantis might be changed by the transmissions that follow. As noted before, a few hundred years here or there does not make a lot of difference to the 9. All the dates are as they appeared in the original transmissions, and BC has been used where it was said. Within this chapter the term Ultima is used, as it was in the early transmissions. When asked about Ultima by Andrew in the early 1970s, Tom had replied that it was the name of a unit working in cooperation with them. The term Ultima later became Altea. Atlantis would seem to be deeply buried in our psyche to such an extent that people become quite heated and emotional when discussing it. There have been more books written about it than most other subjects in the world, and with the approach of the millennium no doubt the list will be added too. Among other things, perhaps Atlantis can provide us with clear reflection. Andrew, the next myths that we hear about are those about the Atlantean civilization. Did it exist, and how long did it last? We have a beginning presumably just after the Akasu period. Tom, we were waiting for when you would ask. I may explain, but briefly, Atlantis ended 11,000 years ago of your time and it began 32,000 years ago. What is called Atlantis was a colony which developed and with which we made contact. When I say we, I do not mean the 9 but other civilizations. These civilizations translated technology. From there other colonies went out, taking the knowledge and technology with them. At that time, because of the gravitational pull, not all the technology was refined enough in order for it to be functional on this planet Earth. The time has now come when all this technology may be utilized. Andrew, yes, what did they call it themselves? I'd like to get the true name. Tom, they were in truth Alteans. They were of the civilization of Ultima. Andrew, oh, they were Altamans. So that's why they are called Alteans, and this somehow became corrupted to Atlanteans. I see, thank you. John, was this about the time of what we call the flood? Tom, it was before. John, was Atlantis in the area that we would now talk of as the area around the Bermuda Triangle? Tom, it went from Greece to what you now call United States. John, oh, it was very large. Andrew, so there were multiple cities of this civilization? Tom, yes. The Mayan culture was one which was left over, it was a colony that lost contact and reverted. John, now relating to that, there was a culture we call Mu or Lemuria in what we now call the Pacific Ocean, was that before or after Atlantis? Tom, they were one and the same. As you had an Egyptian culture and one in Ur, which were one and the same. Andrew, what was the principal means of transport that the Atlanteans used to get around the face of the planet? Did they just move around by sailboat and ship, or did they have aircraft? Tom, they had aircraft. They also could move in their body. Andrew, of great interest to me is the relationship between the remnants of the Atlantean culture, the high culture, and the beginnings of the Egyptian. Tom, interrupts. Egypt was a colony that was very. We will use the term hardcore. Steve, so Atlantis was originally a Huvud colony, an extension of Akasu, and yet it became Altean in influence. Tom, originally, in the seeding upon planet Earth in Akasu, one colony went to what became Atlantis, and another was developed by Huva, through Abraham, in Ur and Canaan. Steve, there's a problem of dating the Atlantis period. The date of the end was, I gather, about 9000 BC. We have a beginning presumably after the start of the Akasu period, 32,000 BC. Tom, that was not the beginning of the civilization of Atlantis. The civilization of Atlantis was a seeding, similar to the genetic seeding involving Huva, Akasu and Abraham. The civilization of Atlantis was seeded by Altea over a time period. It was in existence in phases, for approximately 12 to 17,000 years, but not consistently. Guessed that is a very long time in human history. I wonder if there were any important phases in the development of Atlantis that are important to know about. Tom, the land of Atlantis was developed by Altea, one of the major civilizations of the 24, which was technologically advanced in many areas. Those of Altea upgraded again and merged with those who had already been geneticized. As Atlantis expanded over an enormous landmass and colonized on far reaches of planet Earth, for they had the technological ability to do this, difficulties developed. This was because of planet Earth with its beauty, variety and sense of feeling, because of their love and their technological expansion, and because they were attempting to bring planet Earth to its true fulfillment of paradise. They became involved in the emotional feeling state of physicalness, and became very involved in the creation of larger and more prominent mating organs. They also attempted, through their scientific knowledge and understanding, to genetically exchange creatures with soul beings on planet Earth through transplanting. Do you know what we mean? Guest: no, not quite. Tom: you are a soul, are you not? So if we then placed your head on a cow, would that not be an exchange of a soul for a non-human soul body? Guest: yes, I see. Tom: they were, because of their brilliance and knowledge, attempting to not merge with the thinking on planet Earth, but they thought that by creating these creatures they would perhaps have the strength of the creature, or the creature could be serving them, or they could develop a means for more physical pleasure. And that was not the order of the day, as you would say. They also had realization that they had gone beyond the limits of their agreement. Andrew: what caused the disappearance of this Atlantean culture which spread from Greece across to the Americas? Was it disease? Was it? Tom: it was brought about a great destruction. It was not Armageddon. It was not. It was the spreading of the colonies and the weakening of the civilizations, and it was a natural phenomenon. Andrew: it was what we would call the decay of a culture. Tom: yes. Andrew: and some of the remnants of that, I presume, were present in South America, North America, and so on. Tom: all over. John: this is a hypothetical question. If they had made better use of their resources, then the physical destruction of that culture might not have taken place, is that so? Tom: you would like to believe that. What we are explaining to you is that the loss of it was due to a natural phenomenon, your oceans, your earthquakes. Remember that you live on a physical planet. Do you understand? John: well, we understand that there are repetitions of tremendous upheavals on the physical planet, and I imagine that was one of them. Tom: but your religions of the world would like to relate these upheavals to the gods. John: yes. Andrew: they speak of the floods, anyway. John: so 11,000 years ago the religious story of the creation could be related to the flood of that period. Tom: yes. Guest: are the teachings of the Kahuna in Hawaii a leftover of the Altean knowledge? Tom: they are a mixture, and they are of the tribe of Cohen. Guest: the Altean period lasted 12 to 17,000 years. When did the Alteans' unusual technological development become problematic? Tom: in the last of its 1,000 years. Guest: so before that time this was quite a healthy civilization. Tom: it was not stagnant. It also took in what is termed today the colony of Mu. Guest: and the colony of Mu, where did these people originate from? Tom: Ashan. Guest: centered in what we now know as the Pacific Ocean. Tom: that is correct. John: during this period, I assume they had open contact with Altea. Tom: availability of craft in the sky. All was lost. Humanness started again, then out of that came loans. Guest: when did the culture of Mu begin? Tom: it was approximately the same time as Atlantis, after the settlement of Atlantis and the developing of colonies in the treks outwards. You know that the peoples of the Philippines are descendants of Mu, as those who live on islands in music skirts. John: Polynesia. Guest: Bali. Tom: yes. Guest: and they eventually joined forces with the people of Altea and merged with them. Tom: they were from Altea, originally, seeded then by Ashan. Some of those in Atlantis were from Ashan. There were 3 seedings. Yes. Andrew: did the hawk have anything to do with Atlantis? Tom: in what you would call 11,000 BC there was a return, and the hawk and his people stayed all the time, and were different beings in the minds of the Earth people. John: during this time, did the people of this Altean civilization have what we would regard as a normal birth? And go through a normal life cycle? Tom: no, most cases of normal births are the beginning of lives where the person has come to learn. The births we are referring to are births of souls who came to serve. These are beings that know themselves and have a different intent within their core. When beings like this were recognized as a founder or as a god, as in the case of Horus in Egypt or Lones in Ur, they were not birthed. Birth is for learning. When you are not birthed, you do not have the same emotions as physical people. John: could you describe the function of the hawk and his group in Atlantis? Tom: they were teachers, but they also mingled with the physicals. Andrew: where were they centered on Earth, at that time? Tom: the hawk lived in what you now call Crete. The other was in a different place, but they were in communication as they had vehicles with which to communicate, because they were leaders. John, they were not considered gods then. Tom, yes, they were. Another leader was centered close to where you now have Florida and Bahamas. That is a part that is no longer there. And the one who had succeeded the Hakunakisu was a leader in a place off the coast of your South America. There are some islands there, but not islands of consequence. It was a very large land mass, and there were seas that lay between these lands. Andrew, what was the Hawk known as in this Cretan period of 11,000 BC? And when did he leave? Tom, I cannot find the name in our being's brain, but it would be like Hieronymus. He did not leave. He continued until he became Horus, in Egypt, after the end of the Altean civilization. Andrew, I see. And that culture, I take it, disappeared when the so-called Atlantean culture disappeared. Tom, it was swallowed. There are remains, and there are remains of peoples who have forgotten, but who in fact worship in the same way as before. Do you understand why it was swallowed? Andrew, no, we do not understand why. Tom, would you like to know? Andrew, yes, very much so. Tom, as the leaders mingled, there were those who opposed that mingling. The Hawk and other leaders felt that they were powerful enough, such that if they did mingle, they could overcome this opposition. But what they did not know was that those that opposed had more powerful desire. Then the three leaders came together, and from that period they were in a weeping state, because of the great loss. Then they decided, in conjunction with us, to go and be the founders of Egypt. One of them went and founded Ur, and then later they came together again. Andrew, I see. The submergence or disappearance of the Atlantean culture, spread out as it was this an act of God or was it? Tom, we were angry. Andrew, you were angry. Were you angry with the leaders for their role in mismanaging the situation? Tom, no, it was our ignorance and not understanding the density of the planet Earth. It was more despair, really, than anger. We are more compassionate now. Andrew, could you give us a small glimpse of the level of civilization attained by Atlanteans? Tom, you and the civilization in which you live now have achieved but a part of what the Atlanteans developed. Andrew, I see, so we're very primitive. What was their outstanding achievement, as far as you know, in Atlantean civilization? Tom, in the field of medicine, of a far superior nature than your medicine. You are primitive in electronics, and they had all the knowledge of using the mind to move objects and themselves. If it had not been that below their waist they were always in trouble, then it would have been a fine civilization. Andrew, I see. And their medicine was not able to help them with that part of their problem. Tom, they enjoyed it. We have no objections to enjoyment, it is when it becomes all-consuming. And it became. Would you really like to know the truth? We know not whether those upon your planet may handle it. John, well, we can decide whether we should pass that on. Tom, rather than using of the knowledge of medicine which they had, to improve their mentalities or their physicals, they use their knowledge to improve their sex organs. Andrew, I see. Are there any remnants of this species or breed on Earth, or are they all? Tom, they became a being but are no longer in existence as a being. John, one thing about China, the system of medicine that they have there, acupuncture, is that a system of medicine that came from the Atlantean time. Tom, it is primitive compared to the knowledge of Ultima, but it is more advanced than the knowledge of America. In Atlantean medicine it was possible to replace even the true heart and the true brain. However, in your medicine you can, for example, replace an arm except that it does not have a true heart in it. Vital spark at their time, all the vital organs could be replaced with no difficulty and without severe problems for the physical body. Also the organs that were transplanted were far superior to those that they were replacing. Andrew, that's incredible. If they had all this ability as you say, then they must have had a fairly long life. I mean they could extend life considerably, couldn't they? Tom, that is, in effect, what their project was at that time? Andrew, what would be the life expectancy of somebody who had good medical care in the days of Altea? Tom, it could in truth go into a few thousands of your years. Andrew, and yet with that long life they did not somehow gain an overall wisdom. Tom, they were involved in transplanting. Andrew, yes, I see. Well, I guess all that knowledge can be regained someday. Tom, it is within the mind of the dolphin. The dolphin has the answer. Yes. This we say to you, it is important for humankind to understand the devastation brought about in times past when Alteans existed upon planet Earth, and also why a great many people of that time have chosen to be in the form of a porpoise or a dolphin. And some, now upon this planet Earth, are here to inform humankind that they chose that form so that they cannot recreate those scientific experiments which have engendered the mythology that is known throughout humankind today. They have not eradicated their mating desire, do you understand? We do not wish it to be eradicated, but we wish it to be understood properly. At the time of the great anger and despair concerning what had been done in Atlantis, and concerning those that used the knowledge only for their own benefit, there were, at that time, colonies that were not of a destructive nature, those in truth were not destroyed. But also, in the Atlantean culture, there were people that were not of the destructive nature of the majority, who were nevertheless in the particular areas where the land mass was destroyed, taking with it many people. They understood the necessity for the act, however. There are some of those people who now exist on planet Earth, who have chosen to be on this planet Earth, and they are of a species that have chosen to appear in a manner that does not conform to the physical of their previous existence. We were not sure that this choice of physical body would be of benefit to their future soul growth, but it was their wish, and in their intellect and understanding of their physical nature during their past experience, they felt that perhaps they could then be of service in a proper way. And so they now exist upon your planet in a different form than they had before. They are not acknowledged as a species of a human nature, yet let me tell you, they are more humane than any human on your planet. They are the species of dolphin. Andrew, I see, what about making contact with them? Tom, they are very sensitive to all consciousness work, but they are also guardians of the seas, and many that oppose the transformation of planet Earth live in the seas too. They observe and guard, and they also, when necessary, monitor other civilizations of the universe that approach planet Earth with questionable intent, and they attempt, because of their great strength of mind, to remove them. They are guardians. They are in service in a similar way that many of you humans are in service, and while their language is difficult for you, it is much better for us. The communication that we have is more in their normal range.